A new push to crack down on 2 animal cruelty cases in Lexington tonight. The Humane Society of the United States is offering a reward to help find the person behind the disturbing death of 13 puppies. And Lexington police are looking for 3 suspects in an abandonment case. WKYT's Ben Beddoes and photojournalist Darnell Crenshaw are looking into both investigations.
It was May 29th in Lexington at the corner of Tons Road and North Cleveland Road. That's where someone found a litter of puppies, 13 of them, that had been set on fire. The dogs were 8 days old. Initially, some survived the flames, but in the end, they all died. An investigator with the Lexington Animal Care Control believes someone intentionally did this heinous crime, which is considered a felony.
I mean, who sets a litter of puppies on fire? It's just beyond cruel.
Todd Blevins is the Kentucky State Director of the Humane Society of the United States. His organization placed the $5,000 reward.
We just want to make sure that in a particularly cruel case like this, that justice is brought.
In another animal cruelty case, Jai Hamilton with the Lexington Animal Care Control is investigating a case that happened back in March. She says it was on Emerson Drive. That's where 3 people moved out of a home and abandoned 2 pit bulls. Hamilton says the landlord discovered them, left without food and water. One of the dogs died. The other one was emaciated but survived.
I think it's horrible. I think it says a lot about that person's, who they are as a person and what they're capable of doing to others. I will never understand how somebody can leave an animal in a crate and move.
Now there's an arrest warrant for Catherine Meriwether and a criminal summons for Demetrius and Adriana Meriwether. Hamilton says they are the last known residents.
Do we see it often? Unfortunately, we do. And I'm going to do everything I can to seek justice for those animals.
In Lexington, I'm Ben Beddoes, WKYT.